Finally, the moment you have been dreading since the very first day your advisor told you that you had to take this course. It's time to stand in front of the room and deliver your speech. After weeks of hard work assembling both a speech and an audience, you're finally ready to take center stage and show off all your hard work. Before you do, I think we should take a few minutes and talk about good speech delivery so that you can have an ideal in mind when you practice. Speaking of practice, I'm sure this goes without saying, but it really is important that you practice your speech many times before the big day. As soon as you've created your keyword outline, practice talking through your speech. Notice where you need more information and where you need to remind yourself to slow down or to use your visual aid. Once you have your speech where you want it to be in terms of the keyword outline, start practicing your speech at least 5 times a day. Every time you practice, be sure to time the speech as well, so that you can be sure you're meeting the required time limit. It's a great idea to practice your speech in the car or in the shower, anywhere you find yourself with an extra 5 minutes. It's equally important, though, to practice the speech in the environment in which you will give it. Stand in front of the room you plan to speak from, and if you can, practice the speech in front of some people. Maybe you have children at home who would be good guinea pigs. Or maybe you can convince a spouse, a sibling, a parent, or a best friend to watch the speech more than once. A speech always sounds and feels different when you say it out loud in front of others, so try to squeeze in a live practice. Another thing to consider is the environment in which you will be delivering the speech. Some of you maybe have made arrangements to give your speech in a more conventional setting like a classroom, a lecture hall, or a conference room. Most of you, though, are probably giving your speech in a living room, kitchen, or a break room at work. These less traditional settings can also work very well, but you might have to do a little bit of prep work to make sure you have a nice place from which to speak and that you have seating in case you have an audience. Because you're giving the speech on video, make sure you have enough light in the room and be sure that you can be heard on the camera too. With a few simple steps and maybe some extra lamps, you can turn your family room into the perfect public speaking environment. Now that we have covered practice and setting, let's turn our attention to the main points of this presentation: verbal and nonverbal delivery. As your textbook suggests, your goal should not be to memorize your speech and recite it for your audience. Instead, you should work toward a kind of expanded conversational style that's a little more formal than everyday speaking, but still retains the spontaneity of everyday speech. If you can successfully achieve this style, you will cultivate a sense of immediacy with your audience. Immediacy is the perceived closeness between the audience and speaker. As the speaker, your voice is your greatest tool, and as your textbook suggests, you need to be aware of your voice while you're speaking. First, you need to be aware of your pitch, or where your voice falls on a musical scale. Sometimes when we get nervous, we have a tendency to speak in a high pitch. Make sure this is something you're aware of when you walk in front of the room. You want to speak in the most natural voice you can when you deliver your speech. This will help you cultivate both expanded conversational style and immediacy. Besides pitch, you should also work on your rate of speech. Rate refers to the speed of your speech, and most speakers tend to speak a little too fast. That's why it's a really good idea to time your speech many times before the big day and to jot down delivery notes to yourself on your keyword outline. Avoid vocal distractions when you speak. Words like well, okay, and like are things speakers have a tendency to say when a silent pause would better serve them. Pay attention to these vocal distractions and try to speak loudly enough for your audience to hear you. Vocal variety is also really important. You don't want to speak in a monotone or like a robot. Be sure to vary your rate, tone, pitch, and volume to convey expression and enthusiasm. While verbal delivery is very important, nonverbal delivery, the things you say with your body, is also very important. The first thing the audience experiences is how you look, not how you sound. Make sure that you are speaking, even if you're standing up in your living room, that you look professional. This means you're not wearing a baseball cap or your pajamas, that you are fully dressed, including footwear, and that you stand up if you are able to deliver the speech. Make sure your hair and jewelry are not distracting too. Besides appearance, there are a few other aspects of nonverbal delivery to focus on. The most important is probably eye contact. Remember that concept of immediacy? Well, the best way to foster a sense of closeness with your audience is to look at them often. You'll want to spend the majority of your time looking at your audience instead of at your notes. And it's important that you make sustained eye contact with individual audience members instead of simply scanning the crowd. You should look at each person for enough time to finish a complete thought, usually 2 to 5 seconds. Remember that your facial expressions are also very important. Smile at your audience. They will feel more relaxed, and so will you. Finally, when considering nonverbal communication, make sure you think about gestures. Some people talk naturally with their hands, but others are more reserved. There's no hard and fast rule about how many gestures you have to have in your speech, so if you feel uncomfortable, don't worry. Standing still and looking composed can be just as effective.